so blown away by all the presenters, setting it off with Rabbi Simon Jacobson, which is just a dream. But yeah, so today is the release of my fifth and the final book in the Light of the Infinite book series. And today this festival celebrates it. Just gonna kind of freestyle on a couple of different topics since I'm closing out the festival. And I'll read a little bit from the introduction of this fifth book, which is called Emanations from Illumination. Right now we're actually in our fourth book, called Transformation in the Desert of Darkness. For Bamidbar, it says number 4 here. And last week we read Parashat, the Torah portion of Pinchas, and it's yet another Torah portion that deals with the korbanot, with the sacrifices. And I just think of this line from King David from Tehillim, that basically the sacrifices of God is a broken heart, a broken and contrite spirit you will not despise. So it's basically this idea, so often we think there's this sort of antiquated religious idea that we have to be pure and, no sinning or any of these kinds of things, and then we can reach a connection to God, then we could unify with the divine. But Rabbi Nachman, who was actually sort of controversial in his time because he shed light on that it's through the darkness and through the falls that we could actually reach the highest light and reach the strongest connection with the divine. And it's through this descent, this Yerida, that the ascent, that the Aliyah, that it comes from this. And when we look at the sacrifices, it's just that. I joke sometimes with my chavrusa, David Ben Yehuda, that just imagine like a YouTube video of showing, when people are coming up with their sheep or whatever they're bringing to represent the sins that they had. And you're like looking at this one guy and he has like 500 sheep and you're like, wow, he had a very busy and kind of naughty year. But all jokes aside, the idea is that this sort of affords us this process that the Kohanim, the Levi'im, they're singing and almost doing the Birurim. And in Breslov, Rabbi Nachman, the foundational teaching is Resh Pebet, is 282, which is judging favorably, which is singing, which is the Zamra, which is sort of like ties in also to Birurim, which is to separate or to extract the good and the light from the bad and the darkness. And the Levi'im, by singing, they're sort of transforming what we're bringing up and offering and trying to transform and connect to the divine and transform into light. This idea with the korbanot, now that we don't have the Beit HaMikdash, now that we don't have the Holy Temple, is that now we do it, basically the words that we speak correlate with the blessings that we receive. And the words that we speak when we're talking about an open mouth, a Pesach, or just opening up our mouths, the Mittel Rebbe shines light on the silent prayer, the 18 prayers, the Amidah. This comes from when Chana was embittered in her soul. And this prayer really is our way to channel and to tap into that space that we're offering this to God, that we're connected to the Beit HaMikdash, that we're in this space of when the Beit HaMikdash, when Hashem, when the divine was revealed and shown without the cloud and the concealment that happens now that we feel so disconnected, which is just a product of exile. So it's in this time that we can elevate, right? And there's this lesson, this epic lesson that we always have to remember, and I'll speak about the 10 Sfirot, which are how the world is created, which is also, because we're all a universe as well, the 10 Sfirot is seen throughout our body, through the Mochin, the Chokhmah, Bina, Dat, and then through the body, Chesed, going to Malchut. When we're thinking about the sacrifices and the Korbanot, there's this Ketoret, right? There's the spices, and there's 10 that are these amazing spices. And there's an 11th, that's the Chilbana, that's the Galbanum. It has this foul smell, right? But it's with that one combined with the 10 that creates this aroma that's pleasing to God. And the lesson really, and when we read in the Talmud, it says there's no tefillah that's answered without the sinners of Israel. So the prayer to God has to include the sinners of Israel in it. And you can think of that in the sense of klali, in the communal sense, when we have a minyan and we have 10, it's mimicking the 10 sfirot, and that's how we could really connect on this really high level. But we could also think about it in the sense of prati, which is the personal. And so often, one of my friends called me And he said, I don't know what to, I fell in this or that. So I don't feel like putting on tefillin. Like, how do you get yourself to put on tefillin? How do you get back into that mood of doing these different commandments, these mitzvot that are really connecting us? And there's this amazing sort of visual that in last week's Tanya that the Alter Rebbe talks about. Yaakov is basically the ladder, is basically the connection to Hashem, and the rope, right? And the Alter Rebbe is drawing this sort of, there's a parallel for whatever's happening here. It's mirrored in the upper realms, in the spiritual realms, what's happening in the physical and vice versa. And there's the idea of Hitorut, this sort of awakening from below, and then it creates the awakening from above. And then there's also the awakening from above that creates this relationship that we're always trying to strive towards. And the Alter Rebbe was saying that this rope is actually, there's 613 sort of threads that create this rope. And each time we're doing mitzvah, that's one of the ways that in this Torah that we're learning how to connect and how to elevate any element in physicality back to spirituality. So in this rope, each time we're not doing that, or we're detaching from that and we're disconnected from that, a thread kind of breaks and opens up. And each time we do connect to it, we're strengthening and rebuilding and bringing about the unification of that thread in this rope that connects us to the Shekhinah. And I open up in the book, I just wrote this one line that opens up the key Kabbalistic concepts. And it's, I am all that I was and will be, potential only in completion of She. And the She is the Shekhinah. So it's this idea that we're always in potential and we're always trying to connect to the Shekhinah. So the visual is really the rope and the mitzvot. It's this idea that we're given this blueprint, we're given the rules or just the cheat codes or whatever you want to call it to how to connect, because it's not just through meditating or thinking about or feeling that we're connecting. It's really these actions are unifying us, and it's all about unifying the top three elements of the Sefirot, the Chokhmah, Bina, Dat, to the 7 emotional attributes, Chesed going to Malchut, which actually ties into the time that we're in now. So there's one line that I ended the paragraph, or the chapter rather, for Parashat Pinchas, which we just read, is how to levitate after every fall. And I love this line from Confucius, and I said he must have been in Uman when Rabbi Nachman was there, because he said our greatest glory is not in never falling, but rising every time we fall. So this is really all about mastering. And when you look at the korbanot, the offerings and the sacrifices, it's really how do we master rising when we fall? How do we transcend this spiritual slumber back into this awakening, this renewal, and this connection with the divine? And right now we're in the time, we passed the 17th of Tammuz, which marks the breach of the walls of our holy temple from the Romans in 69 CE. And then there's this 3-week period that in cyclical time, all of these bad things befall the Jewish people throughout history. And time is cyclical. We're reading the energies of whatever existed at whatever time in this exact space again. That's how we live and move through the calendar, because we follow the lunar, and all of the Chagim, when Rosh Chodesh, when the new moon is determined, and all of the Chagim, all the holidays, they're all determined by the moon. And this is both cyclical time, but also sort of determined and connected to this element, the moon, that doesn't have its own light, but shines light and waxes and wanes just like ourselves. And we're trying to connect to this light, the Shekhinah and Hashem. And it's that, as we spoke about, this mirroring that we try to connect to, and we're always trying to reach that level again. So we have these 3 weeks that correlate yet again the Chokhmah Bina Dat, the top part of the 10 Sefirot. And then we have 7 weeks leading up to Rosh Hashanah. And those 7 weeks parallel the 7 emotional attributes. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet. And with that, those top of the 7, the top in the 10 Sefirot, the 7, the Chesed is loving kindness, Gvura is dinim and judgment. So it's these things that we need to find balance in at any given time in life, because we can't, there's, one analogy is like rain is Shefa, is just love and kindness, and we need rain, and it allows things to grow and for us to live, and it's sustenance and life in itself, and it's also compared to Torah. But if it just rained, it would flood. But Gvura, this sort of judgment is also restraint, and you need that to be able to show love, but not too much. You have to have the restraint. So Tiferet is the harmony. So we're always trying to find this harmony. So in this 7-week period, much like the Sfirat HaOmer, the 49 days, which is also 7 times 7, so it's 7 weeks, which means we have 7 Shabbatot, the 7 Sabbaths, and the 49 parallels the 49 levels of purity and the 49 levels of impurity. So it's also the space that can be connected to either side. And the Arizal points out that the Sfirot also, there's the side of holiness, but the Sitra Achra, there's also the 10 crowns of impurity, as the Arizal calls it. So in this time, what we're trying to do is take any of the emotions that could be used, a distorted emotion, or connecting it to the supernal love, to the highest level of that emotion that it could be. There's a story of Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, and he sees somebody. He can't imagine somebody's going to desecrate Shabbat. How is somebody going to break Shabbat? It's such a gift. I think the people that don't keep it, everybody's on their own level, but some people just don't connect or haven't been able to experience it in the way that it could be on its highest level. This space of transcendence, this space of pause, of meditation, of meditating on being created, and not in this space of the 6 days where we're always trying to create, disrupt nature, own nature, control our own lives. We're taking a pause and just trusting and aligning with the divine, that Hashem, the divine, is in control of everything. And we're putting full faith, knowing that that's true. And we're pausing from all of our pursuits, and we're going to exist in that space. So Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, he sees somebody, he sees that he's smoking on Shabbat. So he asks him, don't you know that it's Shabbat? He's assuming he's, judging favorably. He probably doesn't know it's Shabbat. And the person says, yes, I know it's Shabbat. So then he thinks to himself, okay, so then you probably don't know you're not allowed to smoke. It's connected to fire. You can't do it. It's Mechal Shabbat. You're desecrating the Sabbath. So he says, no, I know that. So normally if you're in a space, or oftentimes when you come to this other level, you can't relate to other people where they are, and you bring your judgment. He suspended that and flipped it and said to Hashem, basically calling out to God, and he said, look at your people. Can't you see? They can't not tell the truth. And in that moment, he was seeing the good, that, wow, look at this person. Some people would just lie, and he can't even do that. And he knows that everybody goes through their ups and downs, and the ups are going to come again, and you have to have full faith that they're going to come again. And he knows that he's going to connect. And sometimes we're in this sort of space that maybe we don't even know the light that exists in this one specific mitzvah, or this one act, or this one thing that we could connect in. So we have to trust that when they do know that, when they are awakened to that, they will fully connect to it. And the only way to bring people closer to that is by continuously leading with the positive and judging favorably. And I think it is Melech Shlomo, maybe, that says, feed your enemy, and he's just stressing that if it's your enemy, show him all the good, So how much more so somebody that you don't even know, or one of your friends that sometimes we often judge, right? We could bring these things to a space of good by not judging. Nobody wants to be in the constricted space feeling bad or darkness or being judged by someone else. We can alleviate that, or them, from the space by just looking at the positive and always bringing compassion to any situation. So I'm going to read a little bit from, this is my new book, this is the introduction of it. And the Alter Rebbe brings his teaching on this one pasuk from Vayikra, from the Maggid of Mezrich, actually. And it's this pasuk that's, Eish tamid tukad al mizbeach lo tichbeh. And it translates as, a constant fire shall be kept burning on the altar, it shall not be extinguished. Lo tichbeh is do not extinguish. But the Alter Rebbe, through this teaching of the Maggid, explains that no, it's actually tichbeh lo, that it's extinguish the negative, extinguish the no. And really, it's all about kula tov, kula Shabbat. That's when we get to the space, when we talk about the redemptive state. When we talk about Mashiach, we're talking about redemption and the third and final temple. It's this redemptive state. And I think in Yeshayahu it says the end is coming, right? So depending how you look at that, even that statement, you could look at it in either way. Rabbi Nachman saying, he's looking at it in the good way. He's saying the end is approaching, which means that the messianic time, the redemption is coming. It's coming upon us, which means you can pull it into now. You can live in the redemptive state even now. And the negatives, really, it's these doubts and these constraints and this negative voice, this sitra achra, the other side, all of the things that oppose godliness, but also oppose and try to take us away from our purpose, right? And for me, I was seeing that, I spent my entire life avoiding public speaking. I decided the negatives for me far outweighed the positives for potentially somebody else from me speaking. The negatives for me would be, if I was going to speak, the nervousness, the anxiety, and all of the things that are coming towards me and feeling so strong that for sure outweighs any positive, potentially inspiring somebody, maybe changing somebody's life that would come of it. But I realized I can't be an author who doesn't speak. So I also realized with every no, I was creating this ball of fear, this ball of anxiety, which just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger to the point that I couldn't tackle it. And it felt crippling almost. But in neuroscience, there's this concept of neuroplasticity, and it's really that we could rewire our brain, that at a default, the survival or the negativity bias, all of these things that would have us not do something or be in fear of something for survival, that could keep us trapped in one space or away from the things that are our ultimate purpose. So the idea is to rewire it. And the way that I did that, at least in the space of speaking, was I decided I'll just say yes every time and I'll somehow figure my way through it. And with each time that I get through it, I'll be able to see that, okay, I did survive it and I will eventually get better at this. And by the way, I make these jackets. So this is the Rabbi Nachman, the Breslov one. And I didn't realize that I guess I make them to match my books, because I made a red one which matches my last book. But anyways, so this limiting story that we inadvertently tell ourselves, it's all about breaking through from that story. And I'll just read the last couple parts from this book. I felt that saying yes was also tapping into the limitless potential within all of us, the infinite soul and the powers that lie within our own sanctuaries. We need to extinguish the selfish inclinations that power our no's, along with the false perceptions and limitations that we place on ourselves. If someone is asking something of us that we feel is out of our comfort zone, perhaps they see something that we don't. Maybe they see our true potential that we have covered up. And as Joey from Friends says, it's not even a line that we have drawn or a line that we can even see any longer, but merely a distant dot. It's time to take that dot, the potential, the godly spark that sustains our being, and transform it into something that the world could see. I thought I'd end this introduction of this last book of the Light of the Infinite series with the last part of a poem I wrote for a short story event. My little gloves in this ring, it felt silly, but also felt like a beginning, the first thought of thoughts of winning. How to write a book. I've always wanted to, but that was 20 years ago. Shouldn't these dreams slow? What will I write? I want to inspire the fire that love grows. I want to rewire the mind that doubt close. Wow, these words are waves in water, a well for the fallen. I stood upright, showing them the light that darkness brings, the melody of alchemy. This mirror wasn't so bad. I can only see the present, and even that seemed abstract. So I looked past it, ignoring the reflection, allowing the refraction. I found her there. I stopped and stared. She in every being. It was me I was seeing. We are only light. So this was actually a 3-part poem that I wrote for my mom. And so this last part, you could look at like she, my mom, but you could also, again, look at it like the Shekhinah and being able to see that godly spark, the Nefesh Elokit that exists within ourselves, and finding that with everybody around. So this other part, since we're now in Matot Maaseh, I thought I'd read a little part from Maaseh, and this chapter is called Vanquishing Fear. Even in the 10 Sfirot of light and holiness, there exists the opposite, fueled by the forces of the other side, the Sitra Achra. Just as the entire dynamic of the holy side of the universe has its counterpart in the Sitra Achra, so too the 10 Sfirot of holiness and 10 corresponding faculties of the Nefesh Elokit, godly soul, each have their unholy counterpart, referred to in the Zohar as the 10 crowns of impurity. In Kabbalah, we learn that between the levels of purity and holiness and the levels of impurity lie the Klipat Noga. This Klipat Noga, literally shining translucent shells or peels, contains visions of both good and evil, making it harder for us to get to the pure essence that is underneath and behind all of creation. Noga, the translucence, the ability to see the light, even if it's somewhat obscured, represents freedom of choice, our ability to take in life in either direction. The Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya that it is this finely balanced tension between potential good, which can also be misused, and potential evil, which can also be sublimated. The 10 Sefirot, powers within the Nefesh HaBe'amit, the animal soul, are referred to in the Zohar as the 10 crowns of purity. While a crown is not attached to us, its influence our thoughts. When we indulge in the crown of impurity, we're separating from our true essence and attaching ourselves to this outside influence powered by the Sitra Achra, which is essentially anything that is not serving our awakening, but so to speak, keeping us asleep in this sort of spiritual slumber. It is these elements that keep us from possessing our land. Moshe is tasked with teaching us how to subdue the other side, to possess what has been promised to us from the Creator. So this is really expounding on this pasuk, on this verse in this week's parasha, and it reads, "When you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you shall dispossess all the inhabitants of the land. You shall destroy all their figured objects. You shall destroy all their molten images, and you shall demolish all their occult places. You shall take possession of the land and settle in it, for I have assigned the land to you to possess." So this idea, and coming back to when we're thinking of Sfirat HaOmer, and we're thinking of these 10 weeks before Rosh Hashanah, and the 7 weeks coming up after Tisha B'Av, which was when the temple fully was destroyed, both temples, and a lot of the bad things that have befallen us through history have happened on this specific date of the 9th of Av. We're really thinking of possessing our land. The idea, at least as we spoke about before, in prati, in private, is our own promised land. So when we're thinking of Egypt, Meitzar, Mitzrayim, and leaving Egypt continuously, the constricted consciousness, this constriction, and reaching redemption, the promised land, we have to think of that within our own land. And the idea of finding this harmony, this tiferet, and when we see the sfirot, it's on either side, and then the middle is where the harmony is. Because there's always those opposing forces. As Melech Shlomo says, Ze lumat ze, that everything is this opposite the other, meaning we can have the choice of either one, and they're equal so that there exists free will. So we have to constantly choose light, because we can't concentrate on two things at once. And when we think about waking up, the first halacha in Shulchan Aruch, like waking up like a lion, mitoleret hashachar, the shachar is like the dawn, but also the darkness. We have to be proactive to move away from the darkness, to choose light, to choose positivity, to bring our thoughts and actions, the mitzvot, aligning with the commandments, and busying ourselves with giving to others, with judging favorably, with continuously existing in the space of seeing good and revealing good. And with these 10 sefirot, and after this time up until Rosh Hashanah, then we have Yom Kippur, and there's 10 days there as well. And this parallels the 10 ma'amarot, the utterances that Hashem spoke the world into existence. And after, he would say, and it was good. Because you create the goodness, you align with the goodness. So we have to do the same. I'm going to end. I just did an event last night for my book release, and I wrote 2 new poems for it because I didn't want to read anything that I read before. So I'll end on that. So this one is Deveikut, this concept of clinging to Hashem, to the divine. There was a song I used to sing. It wasn't the one at sea, or the one thee will sing to me, for the third and final. Time isn't a factor, a signature or pattern. It's only a measure of forgotten love, like the absence of a pain that ached. At the moment, just a shrug. What is this melody if not just a hug to the forgotten feelings under this rug? Sleeping them out of the day, I've swept them all away. What was this song but a cyclical way to have you stay? These memories feel real, each one a melody of a sun to your moon. Reflected potency, I've tried to only see the you in me, so I too can be a shoe on a rug of the parts of me that aren't mirrored in we. This next poem is based on Tanya, which is also called the Book of the In-Betweeners. The left side of my heart beat with blood, flooding my body, my animal soul. Insatiable desire, never full. The right side, bloodless ventricle, second to my mind, my godly soul. A miracle that it's ever in control, subdued by the big red machine. A clinging to a thing I've never seen. But what's concealed is really real. And the revealed a fractured figment, a skin, a pigment, covering the light that never bled. I shed you, like dead skin, from a past sin. I've reawakened this earth. I am but dust, Adamah, continually becoming Adameh le'elyon, a semblance of God. Thank you so much for tuning in to all the epic presenters, not only today and for the 6th festival, but all 250 of them from all the previous festivals. You can get my book series. This is the 5th one at Barnes & Noble, Amazon. If you're in Israel, you can pick it up at Pomeranz. And this is the 3rd one, The Sound of Illumination. This is the 2nd one, The Exodus of Darkness. And the 1st one, The Genesis of Light. So just wanted to thank everybody so much for being a part of this. And we'll see you at the next one. And the next one is probably going to be a Breslov edition because I'm doing a very special collection and publication, God willing, of Tikkun HaKlali, the 10 Tehillim, commissioning 10 different artists to do the covers so you can collect them all. And I'll be writing sort of these meditative, powerful pieces prior to the Psalms where you can really try to tap into the power of these Tehillim. And as Rabbi Nachman said, it's the complete remedy. So the power within these. And if you'd like to be a part of that, you can go on lightofinfinite.com and you'll see it. You just click be a part of it. Dedicated in honor of somebody or in memory of somebody or just to bring more light into the world. Thank you so much for being a part of the journey. Love you all so much.